During my sister's engagement party, she mocked, "Some people marry into power, some just watch from the sidelines." I raised my glass, smiling. I waited 17 years, privately acquiring critical shares, and when the company faced a hostile takeover, I handed control to a rival. Our family name was wiped off the stock exchange, her marriage collapsed in public scandal, and her children have spent their lives hiding under assumed identities to avoid the legacy of disgrace. This happened over a long stretch of time. I'm not proud of everything I did, but I don't regret it either. My name doesn't matter. What matters is what happened and why. 17 years ago, I was at my sister Becca's engagement party. She was marrying into one of the richest logistics families in the country, the Arkwrights. Their company ran everything from cargo ships to international warehousing. You've probably bought something that moved through their hands. The party was huge. Rented ballroom, ice sculptures, champagne that came with its own waiter. My parents were glowing, acting like royalty. They always treated Becca like she was born for that world. Then she gave a toast. She stood up in her gold dress, the kind that sparkled under every light. She smiled big, raised her glass and said, "Some people marry into power. Some just watch from the sidelines." She looked right at me when she said it. Everyone laughed. Even my mom. My dad actually clapped. Henry, her fiancé, leaned in and kissed her cheek like she just delivered a line from a movie. I was standing off to the side, near the cake table. I smiled, raised my glass too, like it was funny. But inside, something broke. Not just from what she said, but because everyone laughed like it was okay. Like it was normal for your own family to treat you like a loser. After that, I left the party early. Quietly. I didn't say goodbye. But I never forgot that night. Becca and I were close as kids. Not best friends or anything, but close enough. We shared a room until she was 13 and got her own. When she left for college, she didn't look back. She got accepted into Columbia, met Henry at some business school mixer, and never came home again except for holidays. Me? I went to community college, worked part-time at a tire shop, eventually got a job at a small logistics company in Kansas City, loading trucks and handling basic inventory. I wasn't ashamed. I liked the work. I learned fast. I bounced around Memphis, Dallas, Tucson doing warehouse coordination, freight mapping, regional planning. I kept my head down, took every crappy shift, learned everything about how goods move through this country. Every now and then I'd see Becca on TV. Business profiles, power couples lists, the usual fake smile PR garbage. She was glowing in every picture, always standing just a little in front of Henry. By the time their second kid was born, she was on the Arkwright board of directors. Meanwhile, I was studying their company. I learned the names of every board member, every department head. I read their shareholder reports. I dug through their vendor deals, their overseas contracts, their stock performance history. Not for any special reason at first. Just curiosity. But slowly it became something else. A long-term plan. I started small. Bought a few shares here and there under my name, but mostly used other methods: LLCs, shell companies, quiet trusts registered in other states. I didn't want to raise flags. I wasn't trying to get rich. I was trying to build leverage. It took time. Years. But I kept going. Becca and Henry were too busy playing king and queen to notice. They thought they were untouchable. But the cracks were already forming. There were rumors that Henry had mistresses, that Becca bullied junior staff, that their middle kid got kicked out of school for something involving a teacher. I didn't care about any of that. I only cared about timing. That came in year 16, when a new player entered the market, LineAxis, a small Denver-based logistics tech firm that built an AI platform to reduce delivery delays and optimize global shipping. I studied their model. It was good. Really good. I flew out to Denver on my own dime and set up a meeting with their founder. I showed him what I owned. Not money control. Votes. Just enough to cause real disruption in Arkwright's board. We made a deal. I didn't sell my shares. I voted them, all of them, in favor of LineAxis's hostile bid. Suddenly the press was everywhere. Is Arkwright worldwide vulnerable? Major shareholder sides with tech startup in surprise move. The board scrambled. Becca panicked. Henry flew to New York to meet with their investors. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Her voice was sharp, low, and furious. "You unbelievable little shit," she said. "What the hell did you do?" "I voted," I said calmly. "You can't do this," she spat. "You don't even understand what you've done." I laughed.
No, Becca.
"I understand exactly what I've done." Then I hung up. The board met the next week. Line Axis got their seats. Becca and Henry lost theirs. The Arkwright name was taken off the company logo 6 months later. The family was forced to sell off stock to cover legal fees. Investors fled. The media tore them apart. Then the real damage started. Becca's marriage collapsed publicly when photos surfaced of Henry at a hotel in Miami, with a woman who definitely wasn't Becca. A tell-all interview from the former nanny didn't help. Her kids, once paraded in glossy family Christmas cards, suddenly vanished from social media. One moved to Europe under a fake name. Another started therapy for panic attacks. The youngest dropped out of college after classmates started sending her memes about the scandal. Becca tried to start her own consulting firm. It failed in under a year. I watched it all from a small apartment in Chicago. No mansion. No headlines. No family name on a building. But I slept better than I ever had. After everything collapsed, I thought the worst of it was done. I thought Becca would just fade out of the spotlight, maybe move to another coast, and pretend it never happened. But I underestimated her. She didn't go quietly. 3 months after the Arkwright name was stripped from the board, she filed a lawsuit. Not against Line Axis. Against me. She claimed I committed corporate sabotage, that I used fraudulent means to gain influence, and manipulated voting procedures. The lawsuit was loud. Headlines screamed that the disgraced Arkwright heiress was fighting back. She gave interviews, said she was betrayed by her own blood, said I was a parasite, that I'd never built anything of value, only destroyed what others created. It was disgusting. She told the press I was jealous of her, that I always had been, that I used backdoor legal tricks to steal from the family. And for a moment people believed her. There was a 2-week stretch where I got hate mail. Anonymous phone calls. One night, someone spray-painted "thief" across the front of my building. I had to hire a lawyer, just to keep the vultures off me. But I kept calm. I had every document, every filing, every vote and purchase was legal. I didn't cut corners. I didn't lie. I just waited. And while my lawyer worked on the countersuit, I made a few quiet calls. There was one guy, Darren, who used to work for the Arkwrights in compliance. Smart guy. We'd crossed paths years ago at a logistics expo in Dallas. I reached out, asked him what he knew about how Becca and Henry actually ran the company in those last years. He sent me a thumb drive. It was a mess. Offshore tax avoidance. Consulting fees that didn't go to any real consultants. Henry used company jets for business in Vegas. Becca gave contracts to shell companies her friends owned. I leaked it to a journalist I trusted, someone who never owed Becca anything. 3 weeks later, it hit the front page. Arkwright empire rotten to the core. The lawsuit vanished. Her PR firm dropped her. Her lawyer went silent. Then one of her kids, the middle one, made a post online. It was short. Just said, "We all warned her. She never listened." That post blew up. I thought she'd disappear after that. But no. She showed up at my apartment. Out of nowhere. It was a Saturday morning. I was eating breakfast when someone knocked. I opened the door and there she was. Becca.
No makeup.
Hair tied back. Expensive coat buttoned up to her neck. She looked smaller. Not weak, just tired. She didn't say hello. She stepped inside without asking. Walked into my kitchen like she owned it. "I want to know why," she said. I just stared at her. "You don't know." "I made a joke," she said. "At a party. 17 years ago. You destroyed our lives over a joke." "No," I said. "You treated me like I was nothing. You made sure everyone else did too. You could have just told me you were angry." I laughed. "You wouldn't have listened." We stood there for a long time.
No yelling. No crying.
Just silence. Then she said, "I lost everything." I nodded. So did I. Back then. You just didn't notice. She didn't ask for forgiveness. And I didn't offer it. She left the same way she came in, quiet, alone. I haven't seen her since. But this story isn't over. Because there's one more thing I haven't told you. Henry's father, John Arkwright, the founder, didn't die like they said. He faked a stroke and quietly stepped down years ago. Why? Because someone blackmailed him. Someone who had proof of things he'd done back in the 80s. Unreported shipments. Labor violations overseas. Something so bad he left his own company just to keep it buried. And now that everything's fallen apart, guess who's reaching out to me? His lawyer. When John Arkwright's lawyer contacted me, I thought it might be a mistake. He left a voicemail, polite but firm, asking for a confidential conversation regarding a shared interest. I ignored it for a few days. I wasn't in the mood to play games with old ghosts. But then a second message came. This time it was different. We believe you may have unknowingly triggered a liability that could affect you. Mr. Arkwright would prefer to resolve this privately. Now that got my attention. I set a meeting at a neutral office in Chicago. Private conference room.
No phones. No lawyers.
Just me, the attorney, a man named Gilbert, and an envelope. He slid it across the table. Inside were photocopies of documents dated back to 1989 through 2003. They detailed an illegal warehousing operation in southern Georgia. Smuggling. Unpaid labor. Unlicensed chemical transport. One document had a familiar name on it. B.E. Wallace. My mother. Becca and I were still in high school when this stuff went down. I had no idea she or our parents had any ties to the Arkwrights back then. But apparently our mom worked briefly in their Atlanta hub and signed off on certain shipments. According to Gilbert, someone inside the company had been covering it up for decades. John Arkwright, when he saw line access coming for the company, decided to step away early to protect himself and maybe his family. But now, with everything falling apart, those secrets were surfacing again. And here's the kicker. My trusts LLCs, the ones I used to buy Arkwright stock? One of them had inherited documents from a holding group that had been tied to those old records. I didn't know it, but I had touched something rotten and someone was trying to pin it back on me. You've shaken up a family with a lot of enemies, Gilbert said. Some of them want payback. Mr. Arkwright believes your safety, and his own, may depend on a mutual understanding. I left the meeting unsettled. I'd spent 17 years planning revenge. I knew how to move quietly. I never got greedy. But now, somehow, I was tangled in something older, deeper. Not just corporate spite. Something criminal. Something that could ruin not just reputations, but lives. I started getting followed. Once outside the grocery store. Once after leaving work. Unmarked black sedans parked across the street. Always just far enough not to be obvious, but never far enough to ignore. Then someone broke into my condo. Nothing was stolen. But a drawer full of old legal documents once tied to my holding companies was open. Touched. Photographed maybe. I installed cameras the next day. I called my lawyer and we moved everything to an off-site location. Rented a secure vault through a private firm. But the threats weren't stopping. A man called my work line. Said only, "You don't know what your family signed." I checked again through the documents. One file caught my eye, a transport invoice dated 1998. Signed by both Henry Arkwright and someone listed only as R.L. McCabe. The shipment had been routed through Belarus. I don't know what was inside, but 3 months later, a Belarusian warehouse burned down. 2 workers died. No charges were filed. Just a payout. I dug further. Turns out, Becca's marriage wasn't just scandal and adultery. It was survival. Henry had married her not just for image, he married her because her family, through our mother, had already been tied to Arkwright operations. She was the cleanup. She didn't just marry into power. She was born into its dirt. And I had just lit a fire under all of it. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was war. I didn't sleep much after that last meeting. I started checking my locks 3 times a night. I bought a burner phone and left my real one at home when I walked anywhere. I stopped using credit cards. Paid in cash. I even changed my route to work twice a week. That's how deep it got. The man who broke into my condo came back. This time he left something behind, a single envelope, sitting on my kitchen table. No sign of forced entry. Just that envelope like it had been placed there while I was asleep. Inside was a copy of my mom's employment record. Highlighted were her final 2 years with Arkwright with a handwritten note in red ink. She kept the books. You inherited her silence. That's when I realized it. The Arkwrights had used my mother. When she left the company, she didn't leave clean. She'd signed off on shipments that never should have moved. Dangerous ones. People had died. And now that the family was falling, the people left behind wanted someone to blame. And they were looking at me. So I made a decision. I gathered everything I had: emails, contracts, invoices, shareholder letters, offshore banking receipts, old internal memos, all of it, and sent them to 3 places. A federal investigator I knew from a logistics compliance seminar, a reporter in Atlanta who'd covered shady shipping practices, and a nonprofit that tracked illegal labor in foreign countries. Then I vanished. I left Chicago, moved west. New name, quiet job, no digital trail. And that's when the dam finally broke. The federal investigation opened quietly, but exploded fast. Subpoenas were issued. The media picked it up and ran with it. Headlines screamed, Arkwright legacy built on corruption, labor exploitation, fraud. They dug into the Belarus fire, the shipping violations, the unlicensed chemical transport through Georgia in the late 90s, a pattern of cover-ups that stretched back decades. Becca's name was all over it. So was Henry's. So was John Arkwright's. And yes, so was my mother's. I watched from a distance as the fallout spread. Henry was arrested trying to fly out of the country under a different name. They caught him at the airport with $200,000 in cash and a fake passport. Becca was called before a grand jury. She denied everything. But emails surfaced, ones where she gave direct instructions to bury a warehouse audit. One that would have exposed the illegal labor use in their South Texas hub. That's when the indictments started. She never went to prison. But her reputation? Gone. Her savings? Frozen. Her children? They cut ties with her completely after the trial. And me? I wasn't innocent either. Turns out, one of my holding companies had handled a transaction linked to the old Belarus line. I didn't know what was inside the shipment, but I'd profited from it, even if indirectly. The investigators found me. I wasn't charged, but they made it clear I wasn't a hero in this. I wasn't just a guy who took down the bad guys. I was part of the system. I'd benefited from it, used it for revenge, and I'd left bodies in the wake. They asked if I felt guilty. I told them the truth. I wanted to watch her lose everything. I got that. But yet, I didn't know how deep the rot went. The investigator just nodded. I live a quiet life now. Off the grid mostly.
No social media.
No credit cards. I work as a freight auditor for a small rail company out west. No one knows my name. No one cares. And that's fine. Sometimes I think about Becca. Wonder if she wakes up in the middle of the night sweating. Wonder if she regrets the toast, the joke, the way she treated me like I didn't matter. Sometimes I think about the people who died. The men in that warehouse. The ones who worked jobs they never came home from because someone, maybe even someone in my family, decided a profit margin was more important than a life. And sometimes I think about how it all started. One line. Some people marry into power, some just watch from the sidelines. Well, I stopped watching. And the whole stage burned.